Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a look at a new Toxicroak card. And right off the bat, many of you have probably looked at this and gone, what? Since when was Toxicroak a darkness Pokemon? Now, hopefully a bunch of you have also gone, I remember the other day that Wassy went and showed us a new Croagunk card and explained that poison is now darkness. Now, Toxicroak is a fighting poison Pokemon in the video game, so we can still get some fighting Toxicroak, but at least for the near future, for a long time, because it's been 10 years that they were psychic, do not expect any more psychic Toxicroak cards. They ain't coming, ladies and gentlemen. They ain't coming. So, is this one actually any good, or is it just interesting because of the typing? Well, it's got 110 HP, which is fine for a stage 1, but Pokemon like Naganadel were largely playing for the ability to have 130. We'd rather have that. Retreat cost of 1 is low enough to use U-turn board, so that's a nice little bonus. And weakness to fighting is what we would expect from darkness Pokemon that are poison. Remember, darkness Pokemon that are darkness now come through with a grass weakness of all things. Take my boy Galarian Zigzagoon. But nowadays, if you are still rolling around as a darkness Pokemon coming as a poison Pokemon, you will still get that fighting weakness. No resistance, boo hiss, etc. And being a darkness Pokemon is alright. You're hitting weakness on ghost Pokemon like the old Giratina, for instance, which still sees a lot of play. But remember that nowadays we are going to be hitting weakness on all these incoming psychic Pokemon. Take Indeedee V as an example. So that's actually incredibly useful. It's a decent little typing to be hitting. And then of course you got things like Black Market Prism Star, so you don't give up a prize when KO'd, which is still one of the most potentially broken cards in the game, but it's not played because your opponent can always just replace the stadium. But what does it actually do? Well, our translation comes from the lovely David Hockman over at limitlesstcg.com/translation. Very nice dude, very good website. And we can see a really, really nice ability that says that your opponent takes an extra damage from poison between turns. So now instead of taking 1 damage counter for poison, they take 2. That's kind of cool. Now straight off the bat we do have an interesting, annoying ruling we need to take a quick look at here. Because, well, does this stack? Now the good news is we have recently had a Seviper, and the Seviper says you take 1 extra damage counter for poison, whereas the Toxicroak here says they take 2 damage counters for poison. And you can see on the Japanese wording here we've got a 2, but you can see on the Japanese wording for Seviper there is a 1 there, as in they take 1 more damage. As written, no, it does not stack. You can look at something like Magnezone, for instance, here, which was the one from Plasma Freeze, or Plasma Storm, the Dual Brains one. It didn't say you can play an extra supporter, it said you may play 2 supporters. Which means if you've got 2 Magnezone out, you can play 2 supporters. If you've got 3 Magnezone out, you can play 2 supporters. If you've got 4 Magnezone out, you can play 2 supporters. Well, it's the same thing going to be for Toxicroak here. If you've got 1 Toxicroak out, poison does 2 between turns. If you've got 3 Toxicroak out, poison does 2 between turns. If you've got 4 Toxicroak out, poison does 2 between turns. It never gets any bigger. It never builds up any more, which you can be happy about or you can be sad about, but that's the way. Straight off the bat, this basically makes it an objectively worse version of Seviper, because Seviper was a basic Pokemon, and Seviper did stack. So now you're telling me that I've got to evolve up, and it's not even stacking anyway? Yeah, that's kind of annoying. But as I've talked about a bunch of cards from Sword and Shield, there's no point just sitting here saying, nah, it's rubbish compared to Seviper. Cool. We don't have Seviper, so it's irrelevant. Now, the other thing to notice here is that if you go into Expanded, this will actually stack with Survivor. So we start off looking at Toxicroak and going, right, poison does 2, and then Survivor says you do 1 more. And then the next Survivor says you do 1 more. So this can actually work as, say, a 5th Survivor, and then your opponent's taking 6 damage between turns for poison. And of course, we've always got Burbank City Gym, and Burbank City Gym again says 2 more damage counters. So these would all stack together, but you could only use 1 Toxicroak. 1 Toxicroak would put you to 2, and then everything would stack on top of it, and that's fine. But you cannot have multiple Toxicroak all stacking. I think I've made that quite clear. So it is very upsetting that it doesn't stack. We would frankly rather that it did. But, there's no point crying too much about it. What's done is done. And look, if you're relying on poison in any way, shape or form, this is still a really good thing. Poison isn't a huge amount of the meta at the moment, but you still do see some poison decks rolling around. One deck which doesn't really see a huge amount of representation in big tournaments, but is a very good rogue deck that a lot of people are running online at locals, and I get emailed about quite a lot, Muck and Alolan Muck. The problem is, Severe Poison says, put 8 damage counters instead of 1 on that Pokemon between turns. Well, Toxicroak isn't going to add to that. Toxicroak says 2, this says 8. Now, I believe the ruling would be that the higher number stands, but you wouldn't be adding to this. You would just be putting 8 on. What you're looking at is a single amount of poison just being done here and there as a little bit of fun. So maybe you're playing something like Koga's Trap, a nice little supporter card that you just play down, and then your opponent's active Pokemon is confused and poisoned. This will add an extra damage quite nicely. Maybe you're using the Amoonguss from Unified Minds, whereby whenever you play a Pokemon with Spore, you may leave your opponent's active Pokemon asleep and poisoned. Now, most of the time, you're using this so you can use the Breloom from Unified Minds to do 120 damage because they're asleep. But you're poisoning them anyway, so this will add 10 poison. It's not phenomenal, and it's not as good as Survivor. Outside of that, Now, there is an attack here as well. 1 darkness, 2 colorless energy, 70 damage, flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. So clearly we were going to have an attack which caused poison here. It would be really silly to have an ability that introduced more poison without having any poison in the first place. A Viper had an attack that poisoned you. The thing is, it's just a bit expensive and annoying. There's nothing about this attack which particularly fills me with happiness and joy and love and wonderful feelings. 70 darkness double colorless is just lower than I would like. And the poison is quite nice and it is double poison, but even after 1 turn of poison with the ability, you're still only talking 90 damage, and for free energy I expect a little bit better. And it is an evolved Pokemon, so that 2 colorless energy requirement can be paid with triple acceleration energy, but I still don't think it's particularly good or exciting, and I'm still not particularly much of a fan. Sorry. This is actually quite a disappointing Pokemon. You look at the ability and you go, ooh, 2 damage counters between turns for poison rather than 1. That sounds quite good. And then you remember that it doesn't stack because of the wording, and then you realise we had a basic Pokemon that did the same thing but did stack, and we go, oh yeah, that's actually kind of annoying. And maybe this isn't the wonderful introduction to poison Pokemon as darkness types for which we were really hoping. And that's very upsetting. Hey ho. If anyone's wondering, because of the wording, because it says 2 damage counters, as I explained, I am very, very sure that it won't stack, which does make the card worse. Let's give it between 2 and 3 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. I want to like it a lot more than I do actually like it. Hey ho. But I'd like to know how much you like it, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/TheWassie. patreon.com/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.